Hello, good evening to you. From midnight, the COVID rules here will change, with the self-isolation period being cut from 10 days to 7. The First Minister made the announcement to Parliament earlier, saying it was a sign of an adapting response to the virus, which had to be less restrictive. Our political editor, Glenn Campbell, reports.
For this removals firm in Aberdeen, having drivers off self-isolating because of COVID has made it hard to keep things moving to schedule.
It's been very, very challenging. We've one driver off just now, which then has the impact of having to rejig everything around completely and hope that you've got enough staff to cover.
3 weeks ago, the First Minister seemed reluctant to consider easing self-isolation rules.
Could you cut the requirement for self-isolation?
Yeah, that would really help, because that would spread infection even further, and that would be not doing any favours to businesses. I don't know if you've listened to a single word I said.
That position has now changed. From midnight tonight, those who test positive for COVID can release themselves from self-isolation after 7 days, as long as they have no symptoms and test negative on days 6 and 7. In a further change, close contacts of COVID cases will no longer have to self-isolate as long as they are fully vaccinated, test themselves every day for a week and continue to get negative results. These are changes the opposition here at Holyrood have been demanding for some time.
Every other part of the United Kingdom made the change, but Scotland was left as an outlier. So, First Minister, why did it take so long to make this change here in Scotland?
My clinical advice until now has been that it was possible that the risks of this in releasing people from self-isolation too early and therefore contributing to a greater increase in transmission outweighed the benefits. That balance of judgment has now changed.
With record numbers of COVID cases, there will no longer be a requirement for those without symptoms to get a PCR test. A positive lateral flow should be accepted as confirmation. No changes to international travel testing rules have been announced for Scotland, but the holiday industry hopes the First Minister will quickly follow England's plan to scrap pre-departure tests for those flying in from abroad.
Well, this is what's been happening for the past 2 years. Every time something gets announced in England, Scotland, Wales and Ireland take their time to follow suit. They eventually do, but it tends to be a week or 2 weeks later, which again doesn't help us.
Taxi drivers are to receive £28 million from the Scottish Government's business support package. Hairdressers and beauty therapists will get £19 million, with some cash for sport and tourism too. Official advice to limit social mixing and other COVID rules remain in place, but ministers are revising their strategy to cope with coronavirus with fewer restrictions in future. Glenn Campbell, reporting Scotland.
A second man has appeared in court following the death of 16-year-old Amber Gibson in Hamilton. Amber was found dead in a park in the town after she was reported missing in November. 43-year-old Stephen Corrigan was charged with attempting to defeat the ends of justice and made no plea. Katrina Renton has more.
Amber Gibson, also known as Amber Niven, was just 16 years old when she died. Amber lived in Hamilton and had gone into the town centre on the evening of Friday the 26th of November. Around 10 o'clock, she was last seen in Glasgow Street. She was reported missing in the early hours of Saturday morning. On the Sunday morning, her body was found in Glasgow Glen. Last month, 19-year-old Connor Gibson, who's understood to be Amber's brother, was charged with sexually assaulting and murdering Amber and attempting to pervert the course of justice. He made no plea. Today, a second man appeared in court following Amber's death. 43-year-old Stephen Corrigan from Blantyre appeared here in private at Hamilton Sheriff Court. He was charged with attempting to defeat the ends of justice. He made no plea. He was remanded in custody and is expected to appear in court again within the next 8 days. Last month, the police watchdog was ordered to examine Police Scotland's handling of the case, which is understood to relate to the missing person investigation for Amber. Amber's friends and family have been paying tribute to her. On social media, they said she would have been 17 on New Year's Day. Katrina Renton, reporting Scotland.
A Glasgow teacher has completed an epic challenge to run along every street in the city, more than 6,100 of them. Modern studies teacher Michael Shanks started the feat in March 2020 as a way of making good use of the daily permitted exercise in the first lockdown. He finished the run earlier at George Square and says he intends to write a book about his experience.
It started off, I suppose, just a better use of that 1 hour of exercise we were allowed every day. And then I discovered an athlete from America called Ricky Gates, who had ran every single street in San Francisco, and he'd just ticked off every street as he'd gone along. And it seemed like something that would give me a bit of exercise, but also be a bit of an adventure, a chance to explore the city that I live in.
Floorboards from Sir Ernest Shackleton's Scottish home have been made into a violin to mark the centenary of his death. An instrument maker rescued the wood from a skip when the explorer's former home in Edinburgh was being refurbished. Steve Burnett says he made them into a violin in honour of Shackleton, who lived in Edinburgh for 6 years when he was Secretary of the Royal Scottish Geographical Society.
Started to explore a few years ago the connection to Edinburgh and found that he lived here in South Lerneth Gardens. Came down to see the house, and to my horror it had been stripped out, and I thought, well, any chance I could have 2 or 3 of the floorboards, which is, I couldn't believe it. You know, first of all, the shock of seeing the building in that state, but being able to get floorboards from his very house was remarkable.
Floorboards into a violin. Who knew?
Well, and who knew you could play the violin?
Oh, I wish you did.
Thank you very much. A good evening to you. The sun went down on what was a beautiful day across the country, a midwinter, I should say, day. But those blue skies leading to a clear night tonight and a chilly old night as well, with a widespread frost already setting in and temperatures plummeting to quite low values as well. So that leads us into a chilly start to tomorrow, but changes are afoot with this weather front approaching from the west, bringing outbreaks of rain, sleet and mainly high ground snow. It'll be cold though across eastern Scotland with a widespread frost first thing, and gales up the west coast coming in with that rain as well. The gales eventually transferring across to the northern Isles later on during the morning and the middle of the day. So a chilly start, some sunshine for the northeast Caithness and indeed the Northern Isles. There is a Met Office yellow warning for snow for inland parts for daylight hours tomorrow. As you can see from the warning, it is a mainly high ground feature where we could see some significant accumulations over the hills and the highest routes, but very little snow eventually getting to lower levels. But as that terrain bumps into the cold air, we'll see a wee bit of sleet perhaps down to lower levels. South of the border, we're looking at that weather front crossing across the country as well, with some hill snow in the mix, followed on by blustery showers, and that'll be the case across western Scotland too. Blustery showers following on, those showers turning increasingly wintry even to lower levels as we head towards tomorrow evening and essentially first thing on Friday morning. And there is a combined snow and ice warning for the western half of the country overnight Thursday and first thing on Friday morning as well. That's your forecast.
Judith, lovely. Thank you very much for that. And that is Reporting Scotland. Our next update is tomorrow morning at 6:25. Until then, from everyone here on the Late Team, good night.